Hey guys, welcome back to Ultimate S&S. So a little bit disappointed today. So I'd ordered what was supposed to be some thick plastic panels, which was supposed to be able to make some hen boxes. Ended up what they sent was this cheap wire with vinyl on it. And I mean, I was seeing if I could poke my thumb through it, and it ended up breaking the wires and things like that on it. So this is not going to be a viable option for a nesting box. It was kind of looking cool. Went ahead and assembled some of it. Now, if you want something around the house, like maybe put some little movie DVDs or something like that in, it would probably work out pretty good. But what I was doing is I was trimming it out so the hen could get in without their egg rolling out. But like I said, it's not going to be sturdy enough. You figure with the chickens pecking at it, their claws and things like that are going to poke through this thing. It's going to get ruined. So I will post a link up to this, and my suggestion is do not buy it. The only reason I'm posting a link up so you know what it is. It clearly says hard plastic panels, but as true with Amazon here lately, the sellers are just writing whatever they want to in the description and sending you whatever the heck they want to send you. So do not recommend buying this at all. If it's something you want around your house, it's fine. I think you're going to be able to find a better option at, say, a Walmart for $10 or a Goodwill for a couple dollars than buying this thing here. Honestly, it's just kind of cheesy. So, like I say, disappointed. And like with any reviews that I do, I'm going to give you an honest review. If it's something I think would be good, I'll let you know. If something I buy and it ain't worth a crap, I'm going to let you know so you don't make the same mistake and you can save your money and apply it towards something else. So what I am actually going to be looking at here in the future is, so I've still got several months to worry about this, but I don't think I'm going to build my nesting boxes out of wood and stuff, just because after a while they kind of degrade and you have to rebuild and rebuild and rebuild. They have a lot of really good options at like Tractor Supply and some of the feed stores around here where they're plastic and they're easier to clean. You can pull trays out and just so much easier to deal with. So I think that's the route that I'm going to do. My coop will have two nesting boxes in a similar configuration to this, one on top of the other, and that way the hens can jump in, lay their eggs during the day or whatever, or in the evening if that's what they're doing. But they also have the roosting poles as well. So for the amount of hens I'm keeping, really I would probably only need one nesting box, but we're going to put two in it just in case we decide to expand it all or keep more hens. We'll see what we have out here. But I hope everyone's enjoying the video content we've been putting up. So I'm trying to get a little more diverse with some of our shorts and stuff, showing more of the quail. Went in and kind of peeked into the beehives yesterday. So the split that we had done did not take. They went ahead and they absconded out. The other hive is doing really good. It's looking strong. They're getting honey stores. They're actually already building up what they call bee bread. It's just basically kind of pollen that they put in. So that means that they're getting ready to start laying. And actually, the queen in there has started laying. I've seen quite a few new eggs, and they have pretty good stores. So they should start really beefing up the supply. Do not see any more swarm cells. So I think we've stopped that hive from swarming, which is great. Uh, Typically, what happens there is when you see a swarm cell, it'll be queen cells, and the old queen will leave with half of the hive. So what I ended up doing is I moved the old queen with a couple of frames of bees over into that other hive, and she went ahead and swarmed with them anyway. So it was a little disappointing, but they had laid a new queen. It has hatched. Now it'll probably be spring before it mates. So probably here in a few weeks before they come up, they fly around the hive and they mate, and then they go back into the hive for the rest of their lives or until they swarm out. But I will be going out and doing some walking along some of these trails that we have in the area. Last year went and was able to find quite a few wild swarms that were out there, but I didn't really bring anything with me. It wasn't really my intent to pick up a swarm, but now that I know where they're at and where they're kind of migrating and moving around and stuff, I will be able to get a couple more swarms, and I'm going to start a couple new hives this year as well. Replenish the one that's out there, start at least one new one up near the garden. So, but if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe in. We're going to give all kinds of information, any type of information that we can get, things that don't work, things that do work. Maybe there's better options as far as money and things like that on what to invest in. I want to try to put that out here for people to utilize for their own use if you decide to get into, dealing with flocks, chicken and quail and honeybees and things like that. The more information we share with each other, the easier it is for each of us to reach a level of sustainability. I did want to touch on an article I had read. It was some of these large egg companies where they actually have just like egg layers, and they just basically keep these chickens in these little cages, and they just feed them, water them, and they just sit there and just lay eggs. Well, those people are actually voicing concern over the backyard chicken keepers now. And the reason for it, I believe the true reason, is because it's cutting into their bottom line. Eggs are sitting on the shelves longer because people are starting to actually do their own chickens and have their own eggs and things like that, and it's choking them back a little bit. Now, what they say their reason for the concern is they're afraid that people will not be keeping birds in a humane way. To me, that's kind of comical with some of these uh, companies. The way they house their chickens is about the most inhumane thing you can think of, but they're concerned that you're not going to provide a humane setting for your chickens. So, um, like I say, I think it's one of those situations where it's cutting into the bottom dollar. They're starting to realize people are becoming more self-sufficient, and that is where the issue is. So one of the things that they had come up with is they're afraid that people will use their egg cartons for their own eggs, and then that they're going to take those eggs and then sell them to the public. And if there's something actually wrong with those eggs, they're afraid that they will get blamed for it. Was another concern that they voiced. Most people that I know do not use the store cartons. They're made out of foam, and they have a tendency to hold bacteria and stuff in. Most people that have chickens that I've known, they keep their eggs in a basket on the counter. And the ones that aren't getting used are water glassing them. They're not placing them in egg cartons that they get from the store and selling them to people, because that's actually illegal, because you're selling it with their trademark on it. I've never known any farmer or backyard chicken grower to do that. I have known a lot of people to go and buy the unmarked cartons that you can get online, and they are cheap. I mean, they don't cost much, and they do that. But I think, like I say, it's one of them deals where they're going to voice any concern they can to try to do what? To stiffen the restrictions on you and I being able to grow our own food. And anytime people start trying to get self-reliant, you're going to see a pushback, not from the government to start with, but from big industry. And who is running the government? Is it Joe Biden? Donald Trump? It's the big industries. They have these politicians in their pocket, and they push their narrative of what you can do based off what fills their pocket. So, my suggestion, ignore what the heck they have to say. Do what you need to do. There's a lot of chicken breeders out there. There's a lot of the old timers and stuff. Ask them how they keep their chickens, and you're going to read all kinds of different articles. So here's what I've determined with when it comes to chickens, guys, is you can say, okay, well, how much square footage does a chicken need? Well, you're going to get a wide variety. So some people say 2 square foot per bird. That seems a little tight to me, but okay. Well, then other people say, well, if you have a run that they can get out into during the day, you can do 2 square foot per bird in the coop, but you want to have at least 4 square foot per bird in the run when they're running around during the day. Okay, that makes a little more sense. But then you have the people who are really into like this naturalistic thing, and they're talking like you should have 1,000 square foot per bird. I don't know where they come up with some of this stuff, guys. And then another one was like, it was just ridiculous. So for every 5 birds, you should have 1 acre. Well, maybe if all you're doing is free ranging those birds and you're not feeding them another food source, maybe I could maybe see where that might be, viable. I don't know. I don't know how much these chickens are going to consume, but even that seems kind of crazy and out there to me. But you want to give your chickens plenty of space. But one of the things I have noticed is, at least for now, my chickens kind of hang out in their flock. You might get 1 or 2 that kind of wander off to go check and peck around and stuff like that, but they're within a pretty good area. When they get up in the coop, they are not spacing out with measuring tapes going, okay, guys, don't get within 2 foot of me. It's social distance time. Now, they're all hunkered up on their roosting poles, and they're all up against each other. And I imagine in wintertime, that's even going to be, a little tighter pack. Summertime, probably not as tight. I do have it where that door is fully screened, so they should be able to get plenty of cross draft and stuff like that in there. But they're up and they're together. And the same thing with quail. I've read so many articles and watched so many videos where people come up and they say, you get from 6 square inches per quail is what you want. So they said. And then other people say, well, you want to have at least 1 square foot per quail in your pen. Okay, gives them a little bit more room. And then Other people like you need at least 5 to 6 square foot per bird. So actually keeping birds, my recommendation, if you're just keeping birds for eggs and you're butchering them out or whatever, you just raise them up to butcher weight, throw as many birds you can fit in there with just a few inches between them. You know, is it humane? Is that what the well, they're not humans to begin with. They're birds. They're flock animals. They hang out in coveys. If you look at any of the videos I post of my quail, as I have this really long, 10-foot long, 4-foot wide run, and they're always hunkered in one spot and they'll move around as a group. They're not a bird over here and 2 foot away there's another bird. They're flock animals. They're in what they call a covey, and they hang around in a big group and they move around. So I don't know where some of these people come up with some of their numbers and things like that. But obviously, you don't want your birds piled on them like you see in some of these videos where they're coming out and they've got these big baskets filled with thousands of eggs and stuff like that. If you're running a business, I guess that would be a way to do it. But if you want your animals kind of happy, my suggestion for your quail would be about 6 square inches, okay, per bird would be the way I would figure it. Now, you don't want to fill your entire pen. Say, okay, well, I've got, you know, 600 square inches of space, and so I'm going to put 100 birds in here. I wouldn't do that. That's not the way I would do it. You want to figure up, you know, where they've got room to be able to come into their nesting area if you decide to give them a nesting box. I do recommend having a nesting box. I get the occasional layer that's going to lay out on the run, but most of them will go back into the box. It has a litter pan with sand that I constantly keep that clean and change it out for them. And they get in there, they do their bathing and stuff, and then it's got pine chips, and they typically will lay their eggs in the pine chips. You get the one or two that's going to lay in the sand, but as long as you keep the bedding clean, they lay their eggs in a nesting box, and they almost always lay them within a cluster of each other. You know, every now and then you get one that's kind of just wherever, but that just happens sometimes. But if you're letting them lay out in the run, the quail are going to just be walking around. They're going to stomp the eggs and things like that because they're not maternal. They don't really care. They don't push the eggs to a pile and, okay, we're going to sit on these eggs. They just kind of whatever, drop it and keep moving around. So that's something to think about with those. So when it comes to birds, it depends on how you're going to raise it. It depends on how much space you want to have. Obviously, you want to make sure that they have a little bit of room, and especially with chickens. So when you think square footage, this is one of the things I had to really get into my head is when you figure the square footage, you have to understand birds are not going to stay on the ground, especially chickens. Roosting birds, they're not going to stay on the ground. So if you have something that's, 4 foot or 5 foot, you have, 20 square foot there. Well, that's 20 square foot floor space. But then you have something that's 6 foot tall, and you can utilize height to add square footage. So your birds are not all going to be on the same level. If you put your roosting poles in, you have 20 square foot here. Come up a foot, foot and a half, you got another 20 square foot. And if you continue on building your layers, then you're using the vertical area, the volume of that as well, rather than just square footage. And that's going to save you a lot of money in the long run on trying to not build these massive coops. I can remember I've seen some of the videos, and they're really awesome. They have these things that are like 8 foot tall. They're about 4 foot off the ground, and they'll keep like 10 birds inside this thing, and it's like a 20 by 20 freaking building. I mean, that's great, but I mean, you could really keep a lot of birds in there. They'll have it kind of laid out where you have all this stuff on one side, and those are great avenues and stuff like that. But if you're just keeping some backyard chickens, you don't really need to go into all of that. You don't need to spend $5,000 or $10,000 to build a coop. You can do it rather cheap. You can actually make it pretty secure for a low price and use that vertical space, say in a shed or something like that. So, and that would be my suggestion if you're looking into getting into chickens, is to take and spend what money you need to on what it is that you need to be spending it on. Because if you blow it all on your coop and you have the real fancy, they have the real nice nesting boxes you can access from outside and things like that. Well, man, the way I'm going to be doing it, my nesting boxes are going to be easily removable. I can take them out, wash them out, spray them down. To have this chicken disinfector, you can spray everything down. Went out and cleaned the coop earlier today. Worked out real easy. Just took a rake, got all the birds out, and then you have those scragglers that want to pop a little head in and see what's going on. Raked everything out, got it all thrown into a big can that gets dumped in the mulch pile, and then brought in some fresh flake and throw down in the bottom of the coop. And as soon as you get out of the way, they all in there and they're kicking around. They like to get in there and see who can be the first one to poo in it. So that's kind of what I've noticed with the chickens. But right now I'm cleaning the coop about once a week is about average, I think, is what it's going to be. Now as they get larger, that would probably increase if I kept the same amount of birds. But I am going to be removing several out of that flock just because I am noticing that there's quite a few roosters in that group. So I don't want to have an overabundance of roosters. I want to make sure that I have plenty of hens and then keep one rooster for that ratio. And they was some of our members was have live stream and they said it's about 10 hens to one rooster, which sounds pretty reasonable to me. So I don't imagine keeping 10 hens, but right now I have 11 birds, and I'm guessing that probably about half of those are roosters. So it should work out where we're going to have about 4 hens with a rooster at the end is kind of my plan. Now the square footage that's inside the run area, and then the coop the way that it's built, having that vertical roosting ladder and stuff, that's going to make it. If I decide to keep more hens, I could. I don't know that I'm going to yet. We're just going to have to wait and see how that works out. But I'm looking at, I would like to get some of these different types of chickens. That's one thing when you start getting into any kind of bird or anything. You start seeing other people's chickens like, oh, well, that one's a really cool looking breed. That, those are some really pretty hens. And you start looking at and wanting to buy more and get them in, then you end up having to increase your floor space. And I will be extending that run out into the field a little bit further out there because I would like to keep a few more hens. But I will be putting a more traditional style chicken coop in for those hens. I don't know that I'm going to keep them together because I think I might actually get into breeding some, and it'd just be a good breeding area where if I've got certain types, then I can breed them out rather than just have mixed mutts or whatever. But we'll just have to wait and see how it works out. But I hope everyone's having a great weekend. We're going to let everybody go, and well, I guess the weekend's already over. So hope you have a great week, guys.